started sailing Snipes in 1990 with Ed Adams when he bought his first jibe tech. One of my best road trip stories was coming back from my very first Snipe experience in 1990 with Ed Adams and Andy Pimentel. And we were in Ed's van, and he had just gotten the tires replaced, and sure enough blew the left rear tire at 2 in the morning on the Connecticut Turnpike and had to change it with a jack that didn't actually move up and down, so we had to actually drive the van up onto the jack. And I could go on and on with stories like that, but that was a real eye-opener for me because it was probably hit me harder because it was my first Snipe experience. I sailed my first women's nationals in the late 90s, and the regatta's come a really long way since then. It's been great to see the development of the group. When I started in the late 90s, it was mostly crews stepping back into steering for the first time. It's really where I got a lot of my first steering experience, and so it was a great growth event for the crews. Sailing with Kim is a real pleasure, and I think one of the things that's really important in the Snipe is to have a really good crew and to sail together enough that you're comfortable with each other, because the communication, sometimes things happen fast enough that you can't really talk about it, and it just has to happen. And we have that together now. We've been sailing the boat enough together that we both really click together. So that's obviously a big plus. We also, Andrew Pimentel's boat was provided up to speed and ready to go, which is always a big plus in the Snipe. You really need good equipment in this class, and once you have good equipment, then you can focus on sailing well. And now you see women coming from other classes stepping into the boat for the first time, which is a really nice mix. So we had some old-timers and some new-timers, and it was a great combination of people this year. Certainly winning the Nationals with George in 2000 really stands out in my mind. We were in Oklahoma City, and it was hotter than this and less wind, and we just kept trying and kept trying and kept trying, and won that regatta on the last beat of the last race, and that was really exciting. That was my only Nationals win, and Geraldine Beal and I had won the Women's Nationals a few days earlier, and so it was sort of a back-to-back victory, and that was great. Well, I went out this morning. It was my first time crewing since last year's Nationals in San Francisco, and realized once again, oh, it's really wet up there. And you should never believe your skipper when he says don't bother bringing your hiking pants today, because you always need them when you're hiking in the front of the boat. And it's a little bit harder, I think it's harder physically, but much easier mentally. Steering, I never get tired, and crewing I usually do. And I don't know if it's an ergonomic thing or if it's the fact that you've always got something to focus on with the tiller, so you don't think about it so much. We were trying to remember what our first midwinters together was, but it was sometime in the late 20th century, as we say. So yes, we've been sailing together for about 10 years. Not continuously, and he's won a lot more Nationals than I have, but we won the Nationals together in 2000, and we really enjoy sailing with him. I think it's very different sailing against people who you know you're going to see at a regatta 6 months later, and a year later, and 5 years later, and 10 years later, and you're probably going to be seeing their kids or their parents. It really gives you a little bit more perspective than you have in some classes where you show up and figure, oh, I'm never going to see this person again, and so I'm not going to be embarrassed to yell at them off the water. And there's a real camaraderie in the Snipe fleet, and that translates into sportsmanship on the water, which just makes the sailing a real pleasure most of the time. Sailing with George over the years is just this incredible gift that he has for sharing information, sharing tuning information, trying to get up to speed, and it's partly a business thing for him for sure. It makes his customers faster, but it's also just a willingness to share that goes beyond the job, and that's part of what makes having him in the class special. And there's been some other sailmakers through the years, Greg Fisher and some others, who have brought that same mentality. And it's not just the sailmakers, but that's where it starts. And everybody's very willing to share. I talked to Ernesto in March, and he said, oh, you're sailing light, you should have shorter spreaders. And that was right after he said, you're my worst enemy downwind, you're so much faster than me downwind, which was the best compliment I've had in a while. So it's a real pleasure to sail against, to get good enough as a skipper to sail against the top guys, and then have them still willing to share information even when you're starting to beat them occasionally. You know, a lot of the people I met on the Olympic circuit I knew from the Snipe regattas. Torben Grail is a Snipe world champion, and his name is known all over the sailing world now. A lot of other really, really good people. Peter Komet is a laser world champion. He's a Snipe national champion, and there's a lot of really good sailors who came out of other classes and have gotten back into the Snipe or have stayed in the Snipe all along. you know, I got into snipe sailing and then got out for a while when I was doing the Olympic stuff, sort of dabbled in it, but didn't do it very seriously. And once I was done with the Olympic stuff, I came right back. So it's nice to be back in the family again.